So what does it mean to overthink something? And what makes something simple? We've all had that moment of, shoot, if I had just done what I knew I had to do in the first place. Overthinking generally happens when we completely give up on taking any type of action and we spend all of our time trying to come up with some master plan in order to get something done or to accomplish a goal. But the reality is that we just do this because thinking about things feels good. We get to feel like we're actually making progress towards our goal, when really we're just overthinking the action that we know we need to take. So when making a decision of how to go about doing something, we can make one of two decisions. We can make logical ones, and we can make emotional ones. Both are valid, and everybody leans more towards one side or the other, depending on what the situation is. A logical decision uses informational data that we have stored in our brains in order to make sense of something. For example, choosing to go to bed early because of an obligation in the morning, say to catch a flight or to have an early breakfast meeting. And we know how much sleep we're supposed to get each night because of studies that have been done and because of personal experiences from when we haven't gotten enough sleep or when we accidentally sleep in. And we know it doesn't feel good. So we can logically make the decision to go to bed earlier. Emotional decisions are made because we feel something should be a certain way. Not necessarily emotion as in anger or happiness, but my definition of an emotional decision is one that comes from a place of intangible sense of feeling. Some will call it our intuition. This is based on our desires. For example, choosing a flavor of ice cream at your local ice cream shop. There's no real reason behind your decision other than, I like that flavor. So like I said, both ways of making decisions are valid. However, over time, we've began to lose trust in our intuition. And we spend so much time trying to be logical in everything that we do. And that is how overthinking starts. There's a quote from Albert Einstein that was shared with me recently. And it says, "The intuitive mind is a sacred gift. The rational mind is a faithful servant. We've created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift." What this means to me is that humans don't feel comfortable without secure logic. So when something ambiguous happens, we try and attach logic to it, even if it doesn't require logic. If we can eliminate the need for unnecessary logic, it will make our lives so much easier and so much less stressful. Not everything you do deserves your time and attention. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying don't think about things. I'm saying don't overthink simple things. I like to use Steve Jobs as an example of this. I heard his time was pretty valuable, right? Running the biggest brand in the world, he knew exactly how valuable his time was. So he did things that eliminated any potential waste of time, specifically his wardrobe. His entire wardrobe consisted of one outfit, a black long-sleeve shirt and a pair of jeans. Now, he's very clever because I think about how I get dressed in the morning, and man, it takes a while to decide what to wear. You know, you got to check the weather. You don't want to dress too hot or too cold. You don't want to overdress or underdress for a certain occasion. You have to choose colors that match. It's a process. But by only having one outfit in his entire wardrobe, Steve Jobs never had to decide what to wear. Whatever decision it is that you're overthinking, realize that it probably doesn't mean as much as you're making it seem. There's actually a horrible overthinking disease spreading among millennials. We think tiny little things are the end of the world, and we overthink everything. Trust me, I've done it, and I've seen all my friends do it. I was driving my friend home one time, and as we pull into his driveway, he's about to get out of the car, and he says, "Oh, dude, did I tell you that I finally got that girl's number?" And I said, "No, that's awesome." This is a girl that he'd been interested in for a while. So I said, "Did you text her yet, or are you going to text her tonight?" And he says to me, "No, there's that stupid 2-day rule." And I didn't know what this was, so I asked him, "What's the 2-day rule?" And he explains to me that whenever you get the number of a girl you like or a guy you like, you're supposed to wait 2 days because otherwise you'll look too eager. And my initial reaction was, you know what, you're probably right. But this was right after I decided what to do my TED Talk on. So I rethought it, and I said, no, you're overthinking this. If you want to text her, just text her. The timing doesn't matter. So he said, yeah, you're right, and he texted her asking if she wanted to get some coffee. And her response surprised him. She said that she had a boyfriend. So, so it really didn't matter when he texted her. My point is that in today's culture, we want to overanalyze everything to the smallest little details because we're obsessed with doing things in the very best way. And that's a good thing. But often our definition of best is based on other people's opinions and what other people want and what other people like. And we spend so much time trying to figure out what's going to please the most amount of people when the best thing to do would be to think about it less and to worry about what you know you need to do in order to get what you want. Remember, it's not as big of a deal as you're making it seem. And that might be hard to take in at first. But one time, I was having trouble making the decision of whether to leave my job or not. The reason this was tough for me is because I loved the people at my job, I loved the atmosphere, I loved the mentors I got, and I loved the paychecks, but I didn't love the job that much. So I called my mom, like I usually do when I don't know what else to do, and I asked her, or at one point I said, I just want to make the right decision. And what she said to me is going to stick with me for the rest of my life. She said, Ethan, there is no right decision. As long as you make the most of whatever it is you decide to do, it will become the right decision. And my response was, whoa. Okay, I didn't actually say that, but it was like a revelation to me. Another thing that kind of sticks with me in the same way is something that a professor of mine once told me. He says that as a millennial, I'm much more intelligent than he is. He's just a lot smarter than I am. And at first I was really confused. I was trying to figure out what he meant. And after sitting on it a while, I think I finally got it. As a millennial, I grew up in a way where if I wanted to know something new, I pull out my phone and Google it. And yeah, adults can Google things too, but they didn't grow up that way. We can learn however much we want at whatever rate we want. But he is smarter than I am because he knows what to do with the information he already has. And he knows how to learn from his mistakes. So what I take away from this is that it doesn't necessarily matter how much you know or even what you know. You just have to know what to do with what you already have, and you need to know how to learn from your mistakes. That's where it gets interesting, though, because as millennials, we haven't exactly made enough mistakes to know how to learn from our mistakes. We remember things like social responses and failures, and we tell ourselves things like, oh, I don't want an awkward interaction, or I don't want to fail. And we try and avoid those things at all costs, and we see this as logical, whether it really is or not. You see, the problem is that we don't use our smarts enough to see that every interaction we have and every opportunity we get and every decision we make is different. And we spend so much time trying to figure out how to avoid these awkward interactions when they might not exist in the first place. We unknowingly connect one or two failures with every opportunity that follows. Now, doesn't this contradict everything we've learned about thinking before we act and learning from our mistakes? And the answer is no. You should still do those things, but the only things you should think before you act are, will this make me happier, and will this get me what I want? We can learn from our mistakes, think before we act, and keep it simple. Will this get me what I want, and will it make me happier? Often as we think about how to do things and our gears start turning, we overlook the simplicity of the questions, will this get me what I want, and will it make me happier? I could say it again, but it's on the slide, so I think you get it. But there's a quote on the back of a Stephen Pressfield book called Do the Work. It says, a child has no trouble believing the unbelievable, nor does the genius or the madman. It's only you and I, with our big brains and tiny hearts, tiny hearts, that doubt and overthink and hesitate. Now, I don't think you all have tiny hearts, but what it's saying is that if a child wants something, he or she doesn't have any preconceived notions of what's reasonable or realistic. And that's the way the genius thinks too. That's how new things are discovered and invented. So how can we stop overthinking things? The first thing to do would be to learn to identify when it's happening. It's so powerful to be able to recognize your own thoughts, and it's easy to tell if you're overthinking something. If you ever can't make a decision because you think you don't know what to do, you're overthinking it. If that's ever the case, then you're just letting your thoughts get in the way of what you already know you want. As Gary Vaynerchuk would say, pondering is squandering. Once you realize you might be overthinking something, ask yourself, does this really deserve my time? You're probably convincing yourself that it's a much harder decision than it really is. I would tell myself, forget the data. Go back to the basics. I would clean up the mess in my head, and I would tell myself to forget the data. This school year, I had a whiteboard next to my bed that says, forget the data. And what this means to me is to forget about other people's opinions, because that has nothing to do with me. Forget about what might go right or what might go wrong, because those aren't definite. And take all your previous experiences, all your so-called information, and whatever data is blocking your thoughts, and stop using them as an outline for new situations. And everything will be so simple. I would tell myself, forget the data. Start fresh. What do you really want? The last thing I would do is I would ask myself, or I changed my thought process from how to what. And that's powerful. Don't think about how to get something done. Think about what needs to be done in order to get what I want. Do you want to get fit, eat right, and work out? Do you want to get better grades, spend less time on social media, and more time studying? Do you want to take someone on a date? Ask them. Because when you start thinking about the how, there's an infinite number of possibilities running through your mind, and there's not just one of them that's right. But when you ask yourself what needs to be done, your intuition will tell you what to do, because you know what you want and you know what's going to make you happier. So whatever situation it is that you're overthinking, realize that it's not as big of a deal as you might think it is. You can think without thinking. And I know that sounds weird, but all it means is to not let your thoughts get in the way of your thinking. So whether you're deciding to, post this on Instagram or not, or deciding what to wear in the morning, or if it's something that seems like